The Hawkesbury River used to be a hub of activity at low tide, with oyster farmers, workers and their punts dotting the river's edge. But on this cold winter's morning, it's deserted.
Once our scientists had evaluated the development of the QX disease within the oysters grown in the Hawkesbury, they came to the conclusion we should close it down, which we did. This was to prevent any spread across the state, and particularly into, say, Brisbane waters, which is an adjoining estuary.
The industry was a $3 million industry at the farm gate, approximately. It was responsible for about 13 to 14% of the state's production. It was an important nursery area as well as for table oysters.
50 workers have been laid off and half of the farmers have abandoned their leases. Rob Moxham is a fourth-generation oyster grower.
We're one of the biggest producers, or we were one of the biggest producers on the river, and I used to employ 13 people, and some of them family, and we used to grow about probably around about 3 million oysters a year, but now we don't grow anything. We're a nil producer now. This is Cobar Bay. This is one of our harvest areas, one of the 3 harvest areas up here. This is near Barrow Creek, and this is probably the best, it was one of the best fattening areas in New South Wales. In this area here, like there'd be probably close to $1 million. A very small percentage of the oysters will survive it. They're probably resistant to the QX. But that's one that's in the process of dying, and the parasite infects the gut and it starves the oyster, and the oyster gradually gets poorer and poorer and poorer until it just can't survive. But it takes months and months to kill it.
There are 2 types of oysters grown in New South Wales. The indigenous Sydney Rock, which takes 3 to 4 years to mature, and an introduced species called the Pacific oyster, which takes just 18 months to grow to full size. The farmers along the Hawkesbury only grew Sydney Rock oysters. Winter isn't peak season for oyster sales, but with the Hawkesbury closed down, there's a squeeze on supplies and prices have already gone up. Retailers say that come spring and Christmas, Sydney Rock oysters will be hard to find and cost a lot more.
We're somewhere between $9 and $12 to $13 a dozen. With the increased demand, I could see it going up 50%. There may be 50%. We could be up around $15 a dozen for the premium grades. Now, they're probably edging towards that now.
And prices are likely to stay high for some time. It will be at least 3 years before the Hawkesbury River could produce another Sydney Rock oyster. In April, the Minister for Primary Industries, Ian MacDonald, and the Premier Bob Carr visited the farmers and offered an immediate rescue package. It included 200,000 QX-resistant juvenile Sydney Rock oysters, a $200,000 grant to supply more oysters next year when the breeding season restarts. The government offered to waive fees and rents, to provide free financial advice and to set up a task force to look at the long and short-term solutions.
I was impressed that he came down and found the time to come down, look at our situation and go out in the boat. And I was impressed with that, but we haven't heard anything back from the government since then.
The Minister says his department and office have been in constant contact with the farmers and that they're all trying to find solutions in the shortest time possible. He says he's written to the federal government asking for assistance and that he will submit an application for disaster relief by July.
We've been working on a report from the QX Disease Task Force, which has presented us with an options paper. That options paper is being put before the government for decision on the 20th of June.
The options paper, which has the full support of growers, includes a clean-up package where the farmers are paid to remove the diseased oysters. Farmers who want to stay will be given assistance, and there's also an exit strategy for those who want to leave. The farmers say the clean-up package would give them enough income to survive for the next 12 months. Well, what do you say to the oyster farmers who are in dire straits?
Well, we're working hard on their situation. We'll have an overall package by the 20th of June, but also we've just secured $5 million Pacific oysters for immediate delivery, and so we'll be looking on that and working with them on how we can roll that out into the river. That would get them into production very quickly.
The minister only secured the Pacific oysters from Tasmania this morning. But despite the good news, the farmers are adamant the clean-up package is the only way forward. They say they're worried by the intensity of the parasite in the river and want to clean up the leases quickly. Earlier this year, a few growers thought they'd try their hand at growing Pacifics. Rob Moxham was one. He says 70% of his crop is now dead. Aren't you being a little bit pushy, expecting the government to have delivered something by now?
Well, no, I don't think so. It's a critical situation. We haven't lost half our income or a third of our income. We've lost 100% of our income.
How much longer can you survive? You've laid off some staff already.
Well, I've really come to the end of my resources. I can't hang on any longer.